Hello and welcome to the Ringer WNBA show. I just want to start off today's show sending my love to anyone who's been impacted by the fires in LA and gratitude too to the first responders, the firefighters, many of whom are incarcerated, making $10 a day or less, the organizers, mutual aid groups who are working so hard to help people who've lost their homes. We've got Tyler DeLuca here from No Cap Space. This is a question that I have for you as somebody who has been covering women's basketball for a lot longer than I have. So Satou Sabally, if anybody is not aware of this already, went on an appearance in Unrivaled, which is already another interesting wrinkle to the free agency development.
Yeah. I have thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So she basically said Dallas court her, but they're working with her to send her to a team. Is that going to be a team of her liking? I think it's just a very interesting question in terms of player power right now, because if it is, then yeah, we're talking Indiana Fever. We're talking a team that, people comment, hey, come to the Fever, and she's in the liking all those comments, or potentially the New York Liberty, a team that her sister plays for, a team that is also in a metropolitan city. She is from Berlin. She might be craving some of that feeling.
The whole parade and everything.
She was there. She was basically
she was having a time.
She was like Ellie's understudy, member. I felt like.
No, seriously, like she was. So, like, to your point though, when it comes to being cored, so there is no trade clause. Like that doesn't happen in the WNBA. The core is basically as close as you can get to that. So like Satou will have to essentially approve a trade. So in a way, like this is the most like control a player can have to their own future, in the sense of like trades in the WNBA is being under this core contract. So like there's a very, very limited pool of teams that can realistically, like Satou has to kind of give the okay to go to. And then obviously at that point, you're looking at, it is a sign and trade that has to happen here. So then you look at assets and whatnot and so on from there. But yes, the initial thing will be that, she'll have to accept this trade. So like it is as close to a no trade clause as you could possibly get in the WNBA. So it's super intriguing on that point. And I wanted you brought up the Unrivaled part. I think it's so cool that we're getting this, because in the past years with WNBA free agency, we don't really get to hear from these players between like the end of the season. Like you get your end of season press conferences and whatnot to wrap it up. And then you really don't hear from these players again until training camp, generally speaking, whether they're going to Europe, whether they're going to China, like everyone's so spread out. So the fact that everyone's in Unrivaled, I say everyone, the players that are in Unrivaled, and you have this access to them, we now get Satou Sabally basically requesting a trade publicly, like, which we already kind of figured, but like we got that officially in words. We got Courtney Vandersloot saying she's going to test free agency. We got Jewel Lloyd saying, yeah, I ain't saying anything right now. So like just having this access just adds a whole new element of dialogue to free agency that didn't exist before Unrivaled. And I'm super excited to see like if Satou and Vandersloot are kind of like the first two to do this, and how as this season goes on and if we're Unrivaled, how that kind of impacts free agency. Because also, players are in there talking to each other. It's like Team USA camp.
Honestly, that's the other aspect of it, right? Like, is like Aaliyah Boston, are you putting on the full court recruiting press right now? Is that what's going on?
Like, Sabrina is back with her college teammate in Satou. So, like, from the New York Liberty front, you have obviously Satou's sister, Nyara, but Sabrina and her were college teammates, and now we're on the same team on Unrivaled, just having a laugh, having a good time. And I'm like, this feels wrong, but like, you can't stop it, So, like, I'm just kind of forcing myself to get behind it, and I'm here for it all now at this point.
The other element of it that could be really, I don't know, dramatic in some ways is some of the players that on Unrivaled could potentially be traded for each other. Like, are her and Lexi Hull walking by each other like Zoolander style? Like Katie Lou Samuelson is on her team as well.
Yeah. Nah, that's actually really funny. Yeah, just Zoolander staring across the condensed court, like, and it's just, yeah. I mean, that's what's so, like, these are all the players that are likely going to be factored into these trades or whatnot. So, like, I mean, everything about Unrivaled and its existence and just allowing us to have the access to these players and seeing the interactions between these players and everything, it's just a completely new element to what free agency is in the WNBA. So that's super exciting, and I'm very, very intrigued genuinely about how this changes free agency, both this year and then also in years coming forward, especially for next year when the CBA is in place.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting. Also, by the way, Unrivaled, if anybody doesn't know, does tip off this weekend as well. So that's just going to be fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, within the narrow context of the teams that Dallas can negotiate with, the Fever and the Liberty are two teams that could kind of get into a bidding war with each other, depending on how far either one wants to go. Now, there are some reasons not to do that. There's going to be a new CBA. Satou is most likely only going to be on a 1-year deal, so I don't know how much necessarily you want to be giving up. But the Fever have the 8th pick. The Liberty have the 7th pick. The Fever have Melissa Smith, I imagine will have to be part of any deal, but her trade value is not exactly at its highest right now. So I imagine if I'm Dallas and I'm talking to the Fever, I would probably want to get the Liberty involved so as to try to get a Lexi Hall, try to get a Grace Berger. And then on the Liberty side of it, I mean, they have the ultimate trump card in Leonie Fibic. I don't know if they want to go full Leonie Fibic. Like, you got to think about things before you go full Leonie Fibic in these instances.
You very rarely want to go full Leonie Fibic. But
no.
This might be one of those times.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous. Yeah. But, a Benijah Laney Hamilton moment with the 7th pick, if you will. Dallas could even go to them and say, hey, look, New York has their pick is better than yours. So we need a little bit more from you. But it's going to be like those two teams both have a decent bit to offer. I think probably the right amount for, a 1-year situation with a player that's going to leave you anyway. Being able to get like the 7th or 8th pick, I think is like is pretty good given the position that they're in. I will say, and this isn't just a part of me that wants her to play with Caitlin. I don't want to see her in New York, man. Like,
that would
they
not
already
be
won the
fun.
title.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. Like, not only like would her being with the Fever be fun, her being with the Liberty would be not fun. So like this, from my perspective as just someone who wants fun and ultimately chaos, like go to Indiana. Don't do that. Don't go to New York. That would not be nearly as fun as her addition to Indiana. I'm 100% with you on that.
I want more contenders, not less. Like, this is giving like Kevin Durant ruins a league.
Look, man, as a Oklahoma City fan, believe me, I'm there for that. Yeah. You're ready.
I'll
be ready for that dialogue whenever. Just say the word.
Is replacing Kayla Thornton with Satou Sabally any more egregious than replacing Harrison Barnes with Kevin Durant?
I mean,
I don't know.
That's pretty crazy. Like, it's honestly like, I mean, because the Liberty are retaining just about everything right now. Obviously, whatever you give up in the trade if this happens, but like, generally speaking, like, what made you so good is staying around. And so if you add Satou to that, and even like Niara, like the flashes that she had in the playoffs, and like presumably her taking those next steps as well, presumably off the bench, like, come on, don't do that. Let's have fun.
I mean, that's what Niara was able to do during the finals is probably essentially why Kayla Thornton is a Valkyrie and she is not. So your point is very well taken there. And this is just my message for Dallas in this instance. If you are going to trade her to the Liberty, you have to gouge them.
Oh, yeah.
You have 100%. To make it hurt for the rest of the sake of the league. Please. Please do not let them get so good that a team like the Minnesota Lynx can't come back and avenge what happened to them in Game 5. I don't want a situation where we go into the season and I look at FanDuel and all of the, like, there's just anybody, it's like the Liberty versus the field and you take the Liberty. That's just not the type of season I'm trying to have. I don't think it's the type of season that anybody outside of the tri-state area is very interested in. So please, Dallas Wings, like, get this right. Wherever you send her, just make sure that the Liberty don't get so stacked that nobody else can do anything.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I think also an interesting point with the Liberty, if she does go there, obviously the biggest kind of knock on Satou has been her health. And going to a team where she can rotate a whole lot more and then you have her available, more than likely, like, if you have Niara, you have Stewie, you have JJ, like, you're just asking a lot less of her in that way. And you can rotate and whether not even necessarily minutes restriction or anything like that, but just it's a lot easier to maintain that health over the course of a season when those are your teammates, as opposed to, frankly, the teammates that have been with her in Dallas in comparison. So like the idea of a healthy Satou Sabally being ready to go in the playoffs for New York too, don't do it. Don't do that, please. Let us have fun.
Yeah.
I'm here for the fun.
Yeah. They already have enough.
Enough. Plenty.
Yeah.
They don't need that.
Yeah.
They don't need that.
They don't need that at all. They don't need that at all. On the Liberty free agency note, though, I do think that one wrinkle that is going to be pretty interesting is Ohema Nianen being a member of the Golden State Valkyries now. The former, I think, assistant GM of the New York Liberty was also somebody who was very much tasked with their recruiting and was somebody who was also, very much credited with making them into a free agency destination. She is somebody who has a background with international basketball, with Team USA. She knew Sabrina Ionescu before they reconnected on the Liberty. And I think that, the Valkyries in general are a very interesting team in the larger free agency context, not only because of Ohema and what she brings, but also because this is an organization that, despite the fact that they haven't even played basketball yet, they have a lot of things to offer that a lot of other franchises don't. They're going to be playing in the Chase Center. They are going to have a practice facility. They have an owner in Joe Lacob who wants to win immediately and is willing to resource this team. And they are going to have basically as much cap space as they want to, based on whether or not they want to actually sign the players that they drafted. Because right now, they have not actually signed anybody that they have drafted. So they could kind of go in any direction. It feels like the biggest sort of feast or famine situation to me. I feel like they're either going to get 2 stars or they're going to get none. You know what I mean? For sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like, truly, they can turn this whole free agency upside down because they could change the market for role players. They could obviously take away star players. So, like, I'm genuinely very, very interested in what Golden State does. To your point, though, I mean, like, the city's already bought in. Like, we've seen that, like, the ticket sales are already through the roof, and you haven't even really, like, put a star player there. So, like, if you're looking at a Kelsey Plum, if you're looking at a Jewel Lloyd, potentially, obviously, that would be both of those via trade as well. Even DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas at a package deal type thing and doing it like that. Like, there's a whole lot of different ways the Valkyries could go. I'm honestly very intrigued by, because to your point, Joe Lacob, I remember at like their first press conference, like when I think they announced like the logo and everything, he was like, "We're gonna be WNBA champions in 5 years." And I was like, "Oh, okay, buddy, let's see." But the thing is, to me, to accomplish that, I don't feel like you go and sign the stars now. I think you look at year 4 and 5 to be doing that, and this year and next year you're looking at the draft. I don't want to use the T word, but like, there's a couple franchises in the WNBA that have been stuck in the middle for a long time. And at the same time, it's really hard to get out of the middle, but also the WNBA, with it being a smaller league in this sense, and also as with the factors that you mentioned of what makes Golden State such a enticing destination for players to want to go and play there. If you go and get a number 1 pick or 2, I could think of a couple college players I would want to start my franchise with that are going to be coming out in the next couple years. I wouldn't mind waiting a little bit in that way, but also I understand wanting to capitalize on the excitement of year 1 in Golden State. So like, genuinely, like, Golden State could do absolutely nothing, to your point, and kind of wait it out and play this year out, establish his first year, and then go from there after next year's draft, whether it be with potentially a Lauren Betts, for example.
Just to drive down the PCH.
Yeah, simple, and or they can go make a splash. And so, like, genuinely, I think they are probably the team I'm most interested in figuring out, just like, what is the game plan for this year? Like, what is the standard? What bar are you trying to reach in year 1? Because they could flip this whole free agency upside down if they truly wanted to, with how much money that they are capable of spending in this first free agency. And maybe they want to do it before the other expansion teams come, before the CBA starts. I don't know. So I'm genuinely very, very intrigued by what the Valkyries end up doing.
Yeah, and I think that what you're talking about right now is something that I've personally kind of struggled with because I would go down that route too of let's just tank. I'll use the T word.
You used it. Since we're using it, let's lock
I'll
in.
use the T word. But I just don't think that is something that Natalie Nakase in particular, their head coach, is like just not in her constitution.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not something
Joe
that
Lacob's either, to be honest. Like I don't
No, this is the guy who said winning never stops. Like he just is not about the ebbs and flows of team building. He's not about the peaks and valleys. You know, he's about the peaks. And that's his MO. And hey, look, right now I would say for the Golden State Warriors, it might have been nice to hit a valley. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. But overall, it feels like this team just wants to compete right away. You saw it in the players that they drafted. And I think you're probably going to see in their free agency strategy as well. I think they're going to just try to do the best they can. And honestly, I do think that they are in an interesting spot when it comes to just taking one all-in year and seeing what they're capable of because of the new CBA kicking in. Nobody's going to sign more than a one-year deal. They could basically just say, hey, like if I was them and I wanted to go down this free agency path, my strategy is, let me just target Kelsey Plum at first. Make sure that she's interested. Kelsey Plum, by the way, cored by the Aces. Seems like she is probably going to be on the move. She has a relationship with Natalie Nakase, who is also a assistant coach on Vegas. And those two, they're both just dogs. You know,
the match. They would make perfect sense to me. Like it's a new place with familiar faces, so it's a kind of a good mix of like. If Kelsey Plum is going to go be your franchise cornerstone, at least for these beginning couple of years, like there's worse places for Kelsey to take that next step on. Because obviously, like when you have A'ja Wilson on your team, like no matter how good Kelsey Plum is, it's A'ja Wilson's team, in that way. So it feels like a very, very, it lines up very seamlessly, honestly. Like if Kelsey Plum is on the move, Golden State just makes a whole lot of sense for several different reasons, honestly.
I think for the culture that they're trying to build too. You know, I think just we had Natalie on the pod a couple weeks ago, and I think the thing that stood out most to me is that she's going to value competitiveness over just about everything. She's going to value it over size and dimension even as well. And then you look at Kelsey Plum. I don't know that there's a player that's better to set a culture like that, where like no matter what, like. Even if she's undersized against a defender, she'll just get under them. She's like turned herself into a star, basically, after struggling her first few years in the league, and just works incredibly hard. This is something that I think is so well documented about her, and the things that, even her peers who are on the upper echelons of working hard really, really admire about her. So I think she's your culture setter. She's the one that you're probably most likely to be able to bring in first. And then maybe you can go to like Aneka Ogwumike and be like, hey, you miss Stanford?
What's up? Yeah, you like trees? Yeah. You like no, I completely
you like
agree.
The sun? Although I will say the Bay Area is kind of
I've never personally been, so I don't know how it compares to Seattle in that way. But I mean, like NECA is the one where it's like, obviously we know Seattle from our sources at the Chicago Sky social media team. They got a lot going on. And so NECA, like it seems like the relationship there, like between NECA and like the coaching staff and everything, like that seems cool. But you still got facilities over here. We got, we got money over here, and NECA can't get the max contract either. Like with it's a weird like because like it's a length with the team, so like she can't be core. There's a whole bunch of different things. So like she's not getting max money this year anyway. So like I think it's worth the flyer on NECA. You're at least making that call.
I also just feel like, and maybe this is something that we're just not going to get, but I feel like I need a better explanation for everything that went down in Chicago, because on the other end of this, one of the players that you have tendered a qualifying offer to is Dana Evans. When you talk about the press conference energy being weird,
it was Dana.
It was Dana.
It was Dana for
when you
for
talk
a lot
about
of it.
like a manager who is like tweeting about Dana Evans not getting enough playing time. Dana Evans requested a trade, and she didn't deserve the playing time. She shouldn't have been playing. Now, maybe you don't have to take her out of the rotation fully. Maybe that was a little bit too dramatic a move. But like, if I'm just looking at what I know 100%, in terms of things that people have actually said and not just trying to like read the room and like make assumptions. The player who I don't want to say causing locker room problems or anything like that, because I think like, you know, Dana has every right to be upset. She's 26 years old and she thinks she can do more than she can. I think that's just a mindset that any professional athlete is going to have. But if there's anybody who was upset with their situation outside of course, Marina Mabrey, who was traded, it's Dana Evans, who was also, Dana was taken out of the rotation because Chennedy Carter was playing so well that you had to play her. Yeah. And I just feel like in general, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe it's just a matter of we don't have the reporting, so I don't necessarily believe it. Maybe I am a little too high on Chennedy. I also just tend to think that like Chennedy just seems like somebody who is in the situation of like all of us, like you have to fight the same fight until you eventually beat it. So she ends up in these similar situations. It did feel like she actually did make a lot of headway in terms of, you know, just getting her act together. And now she's playing in China and it's like kind of the same deal right now. Like she's on her best behavior and it feels like she really, really tried. Like that's kind of what I got from Chennedy on the outside looking in. It just makes it, this sort of narrative is out there right now. I think that we've all sort of, we've assumed, like the ether is sort of assumed, and it's really delicious as a narrative. So it's easy to believe this idea that like, you know, Chicago, they just flew too close to the sun and they imploded. So they have to get rid of their most fiery player. And that was kind of, I think, what was created, especially after Teresa Weatherspoon got fired, because as much as, look, I think the Tyler Marsh decision is great. I think that he's a really good balance of somebody who's going to let them keep that culture, but also be tactically a much better coach than her. I can definitely understand that decision now. But they never really fully explained why Teresa only got 1 year. And it feels like we all sort of assume that what I just talked about was why. And look, the reality is before that trade, their starting lineup with Carter, Mabrey, Lindsay Allen, and Cardoso and Angel Reese had a +11 net rating. It was 6th in the league in minutes played. It was one of the best lineups in the W. They were winning with it. They had to let it go because Mabrey wanted out. And hey, that's all good. More power to her. She wanted to go to a contender. She obviously had some issues in Chicago. And there are issues in Chicago, right? Like we're not denying that there were some issues in Chicago. It's just sort of like, yeah, I don't know. Mabrey gets traded, then Chennedy gets hurt, then Angel gets hurt, and they suck. But within that, I'm just not fully convinced that this wasn't a situation where they kind of figured things out. Mabrey gets traded, they have a bunch of injuries, and things fall apart. And they just seem to want to completely divorce themselves from the one aspect of the season that actually worked for them.
Yeah, I don't disagree. This feels very drastic. Again, like whatever the reason is behind not giving Chennedy this offer, feels incredibly drastic. So like, no matter what the reason is, frankly, it feels wrong. Again, even if you just have the control, because kind of to your point, like obviously this is not the first time that Chennedy Carter has kind of been, I guess, casted out, if you want to put it like that, like from different teams. So like, frankly, like there's not a ton of teams in the league already, and then you're already crossing some of these off just due to past relationships. So like, unless this is some really kind of backwards strategy of like testing the market. But like even then, like you would still do the qualifying offer so then you could match it. So like I don't see the logic behind this from Chicago in that way, because they are a better basketball team when Chennedy Carter is playing for them right now. Like there's no matter who, like even if, because realistically, like to your point, like the realistic pick right now is Sonia at 3. That's not a point guard in that way. Obviously, if you go get Olivia Miles and you're different, but I still think Olivia and Chennedy could coexist. And I don't think that would be like
she plays really with Hannah Hidalgo, and that's what I'm saying.
So like, I'm not really too worried about that, even if that ends up being the case for Chicago. So I've really genuinely tried to like put logic behind this for Chicago, and the only thing I can come back to is the total kind of energy cleanse, which even then, like I still don't agree with in that way. So here's the 2026 Chicago and your free agency pursuits there, because 2025 I'm not moved at all with what this is looking like so far for Chicago and free agency.
Yeah, I got a couple Kennedy questions for you. First of all, I would like to get your perspective as like a longtime coverer on just the Atlanta situation and the LA situation with Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Kennedy is not at fault. Like, there is fault at her feet.
Yeah,
for Kennedy, zero doubt in that. But man, when it comes to like grace being given across sports and like what we see just in sports in general to athletes, there's a whole lot of worse stuff going on than what we've seen at these places. I mean, you can look at the NBA alone and like the one-to-one basketball comparison there, and some of the players that are still playing on the court for these teams. So like, again, Kennedy has never been able to find a home in the W. And again, like, I want to make it clear, like, some of that is to her own fault.
Right.
But
yeah.
it's never felt like an organization has truly backed Kennedy. And so for that, like, that's why I loved this season of Kennedy. Like, there were still faults throughout this season with Chicago, whether it be going on social media or whatever. Like, there was things that you don't want your players to do if you are the organization, right? But this felt like the first time that she felt comfortable in the WNBA. And learning. And I think obviously the relationship with Spoon seemed like super imperative in that. And like they just understood each other on like just such a personality like level of hooper, you know, in that way. And that's not something she's ever had in the league at any of her stops prior. And I feel like whether it felt like at times kind of scapegoated in like in LA, it felt more kind of scapegoaty in that way. Atlanta, the situation kind of was what it was, and like when you have stuff like that go down. But again, it's just never felt like an organization has ever really given her the chance until Chicago. And then we're now seeing that chance kind of revoked in this way from what we know in the public eye. So like that's where I'm at with it right now, where it's like, does Kennedy need to tighten up on certain things? I think so, 100%. But at the same time, like that's a really good basketball player, and there have been basketball players who've been playing basketball who've done a whole lot worse, and it felt like this was finally on the right track in Chicago. And so to see it kind of pulled out from under her in a way, with Spoon, then moving on from Spoon and then kind of going from there. It's unfortunate to see as like a fan of women's basketball, because women's basketball is more fun when Chennedy Carter is on a WNBA team. So from that perspective, there's certainly fault at her feet, but at the same time, I don't feel like an organization has ever really like given her the true shot until this past year, specifically with Spoon in Chicago. So I don't know. It sucks, honestly.
Yeah.
As a women's basketball fan, it sucks because I want Kennedy to play. She's a hooper. I want her on the court.
She's sick. She's sicko. Do you think she's in the league next year?
Man, it's because as you run down this list of teams, I think yes, but it really might not be the opportunity that you would kind of immediately come to mind, in the same role, like where we just see her hoop in this way. But maybe it's like a Vegas, like
I can see that, yeah.
Where like you need some of that depth, especially if Kelsey Plum is on the way out. Like kind of if you go and get the big, like I was kind of alluding to, like if the market's not really there, like that is like the first thing that jumps to mind as a potential landing spot for Kennedy. So like I want to say yes, but it really might be like, okay, this is genuinely your last chance. And the only reason she bought that last chance was because of how well she played this past season in Chicago. Because I think there's an argument to be made. She was a top 5 guard in the league. Honestly,
should have been an all-star. Would have been an all-star if she was starting the whole season.
Yeah, agree. So like you're it's not like this is like some very rotational guard. Like, no, we just you got to drive the car a little bit. You got the keys this year, and we saw what you were able to do. So like,
yeah, I mean, this could be like a top 5 isolation player in the league.
Absolutely. So like from that perspective, it's like somebody has to, so you would think somebody has to take this chance on Kennedy. So the Aces are the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm gonna say yes to that question of her being in the league because of that. But like the ice could not feel thinner, assuming that she is, given another chance in this league. But again, it seems like kind of a crappy situation all around, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. You know where I could see her? Whether it's like an insurance policy or just a way to recoup if Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner do leave, or if they stay. I really like the Connecticut Sun for her.
That's interesting. Man, her and Dejanay would have teams in hell.
Honestly.
I would love it. That would be so fun.
Doesn't she feel like a culture fit too?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, like we know. I mean, Connecticut's already been built around like kind of the toughness aspect. Like that is what they're known for. The coach is coming in bringing that same exact mentality. Like they brought a coach to fit the already existing mentality that's there. Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, I mean, I don't think like Connecticut can never kind of get enough bucket getters right now. Like, yeah, you get Mabry, so like that helps aid in that. But still, like you could always use some shot creation in Connecticut when you have kind of Alyssa Thomas as like the main centerpiece of your team. So yeah, I see that. Yeah, I think Vegas and Connecticut are two very possible. Like we have vets. We feel like we can handle this situation if there is a situation. So yeah, I like that fit. I like that fit.